June 26, 1941. 4 days into the largest invasion in history, and the Soviet Air Force is already bleeding out. Somewhere over the burning roads of Belarus, a twin-engine bomber is on fire. Bombs, gone. Ammo, spent. Engine, dying. The crew has one way to live: bail out. Their captain refuses. Captain Nikolai Gastello banks his flaming Il-4 toward a 1-kilometer column of German tanks, trucks, and fuel tankers, and aims straight down. One plane. One crew. One decision that will echo across the Eastern Front. Before he became a legend, Nikolai Gastello was a factory worker from Moscow, born 1907, son of a laborer, one of millions of Soviet men who watched the state turn itself into an industrial power through sheer brutal will. He didn't grow up dreaming of dogfights. He became a pilot because the Soviet state needed bomber crews. By June 1941, he's a captain in the 211th Bomber Aviation Regiment, flying the Il-4, a long-range twin-engine bomber built for deep strike missions, not a glamorous dogfighter. A workman's bomber for a workman's war. His crew: navigator Fyodor Uglov, gunner Grigory Berdenyuk, radio operator Alexei Skorobogaty. 4 men. 1 aircraft. Based near Minsk when, on June 22nd, the sky above them fills with German planes, and Operation Barbarossa tears the front open. 4 days later, 3 of those men will be dead. The 4th will make a decision that gets taught in military academies for the next 80 years. Here's what that decision looked like from inside the cockpit. The mission is simple and brutal: bomb the German motorized columns advancing along the Dubniki Highway. The Soviet lines are collapsing so fast that pilots fly without sleep, without escort, without any real hope of completing the run and coming home. Gastello takes his crew low. They find their target, a river of German steel and diesel, and they drop everything they have. Trucks explode. Fuel tankers erupt. Columns scatter. What happens in the next 30 seconds becomes the most replayed moment in Soviet Air Force history. Then the 88s open up. German anti-aircraft gunners, concealed, patient, precise, track the bomber as it pulls away. A shell tears into the port engine. Then another. The Il-4 is burning. Inside that cockpit, Gastello makes a calculation. Bail out? On a burning dive, only the pilot has a realistic chance of escape. Bailing out means leaving 3 men to burn. Soviet accounts say he gets on the radio. His reported final words: "Comrades, help the crew bail if you can." Then he stops transmitting. And he does not bail. Below him, stretching nearly a kilometer, is a column of German tanks, half-tracks, and fuel tankers. He pushes the nose down, full throttle. The impact is visible for miles. On the ground, reconnaissance later reports a dozen tanks and multiple trucks destroyed. 1 burning bomber has turned a marching column into a firestorm. Local villagers recover what's left. They bury the crew using parachutes as shrouds. There are no coffins. There is barely anything to bury. Word reaches Moscow. Stalin's propaganda apparatus, desperate for heroes as an entire army group crumbles, understands immediately what Gastello's act means. Within days, posthumous heroes of the Soviet Union for all 4 crew members. The highest honor the state can give, handed to men who are already ash. The story goes everywhere: newspapers, radio, painted murals in train stations and factory halls. Gastello becomes a verb. Soviet pilots who perform ramming attacks are now called Gastelovцы, Gastello's men. In the years that follow, hundreds of Taran attacks are recorded. Some pilots survive, most don't. Streets are renamed. A warship bears his name. Children across the Soviet Union grow up learning who Nikolai Gastello was before they learn almost anything else about the war. He didn't just die for his country. He was turned into an idea, and ideas don't burn. Now here's the part that was classified for 50 years. When the Soviet Union fell and the archives finally opened, investigators found something nobody was supposed to find. The hero of the story, the man whose name was on every street sign, every warship, every school textbook, might not have been the man in that cockpit. In 1951, during road construction near the crash site, workers found Il-4 wreckage. Standard enough. But no bodies. The records were quietly filed away. In the 1990s, researcher Lev Maslov reopened the case. His conclusion, a different crew may have carried out the actual ramming, possibly pilot Alexander Maslov, whose aircraft was also hit in that same sector that day. He argued that the credit was assigned to Gastello, the senior officer, because his name was more useful to the propaganda machine. Eyewitnesses from the formation describe a burning Il-4 banking into a German column. Radio logs record Gastello's final transmission. Recon imagery confirms massive destruction. No body was found because the impact was catastrophic. The 1951 wreckage with no human remains is suspicious. Multiple Il-4s went down in the same sector. In a system built on heroic myths, assigning a legendary act to a convenient name was easy. Gastello's son Victor spends decades fighting to defend his father's story, which shows how serious the controversy became. Drop a comment. Gastello or Maslov? Who do you believe? Here's what we can say for certain. Someone did it. A Soviet crew in a burning bomber with nothing left to fight with aimed their plane at a German column on June 26, 1941, and did not flinch. Whether the name on the fuselage is exactly right almost doesn't change the essential fact. The act happened. The sacrifice was real. And in a war where the Soviet Union would lose tens of millions of people, the story did what wartime stories always do. It kept men fighting when logic said stop. The Taran, the ramming attack, was not new. The Soviets had used it in the Winter War, and they would use it hundreds more times before this war ended. But Gastello's Taran was first to be turned into a national legend, and first to find the shape of everything that follows. In the summer of 1941, the Wehrmacht was ripping through Soviet defenses at a speed that stunned even seasoned officers. In that kind of disaster, every act of defiance mattered. A burning plane banking toward a German column told other pilots, you fight until the last second. You aim at something. You don't just die, you take them with you. Think about what that costs. Think about what it buys. That's why we study these micro moments. Not because one bomber changed the war, but because the war was built out of 10,000 decisions like this, made by people you've never heard of, in places you'll never visit, under pressures we can barely imagine. The wrong name? Possibly. The wrong story? No. This is Battle History Files. And we're just getting started. If you want more untold Eastern Front stories, the KV-1 that held a bridge alone for 2 days, the night witches flying wooden biplanes against the Luftwaffe, the 300 men at Brest Fortress who held out for a month after encirclement, this is the channel where you'll find them. Subscribe. Drop a comment. Tell me which Eastern Front story you want next.